Awesome. What a terrific discussion we've had. So I'd like to bring up the panelists for this evening's discussion, and Keith Larson, who's the CFO of All Health Network. And I want to start just by telling you a little bit about All Health Network. All Health Network is the community behavioral health center serving Arapahoe and Douglas counties and beyond. The mission of All Health is to enhance quality of life for individuals and families in our communities through compassionate, integrated behavioral health services. All Health Network serves more than 16,000 individuals in the past year. That's a lot of people. They provide culturally inclusive behavioral health services through a range of programs that serve people of all ages with everyday troubles to those with really severe and persistent mental illness. Services are provided in Littleton, Castle Rock, Parker, and DTC, and in 22 schools, 3 primary care offices with local law enforcement. And local law enforcement will go with them in some of these severe cases. All Health Network has inpatient and outpatient services that include group, individual, and family counseling. There are currently almost 200 clinicians and under about 100 medical team members who are skilled in best practices such as early childhood, trauma, chemical dependency, medication management, crisis intervention, anxiety, depression, LGBTQ, severe mental illness, and older adults. The care goes beyond behavioral health to provide specialized health services, including substance use, employment support, primary care, and victim services, all of which are important to fulfilling a healthy life. All Health accepts most fund sources, including private insurance and public insurance, Medicare and Medicaid. All Health Network is proud of its history and commitment to the South Metro area, where they've been helping people live full and productive lives since 1955. So we're excited for you all. How many of you before tonight who weren't invited by Keith had heard of All Health Network? So we're really excited to disseminate this information, and we're going to be talking about a pretty serious conversation, which is mental health. So Keith Larson, CFO. If we can have all the panelists come up here and take a seat, that'd be terrific.
I'm really honored to be introduce the panelists tonight. But before I do that, I want to thank a whole bunch of people, because you don't do something like this without thanking a bunch of people. Come on. So the first person you have to thank is Shelley. Come on, give her a round of applause. She paid for snacks and drinks tonight, so thank you, Shelley. I've been a friend of Shelley's for about 15 years, and I didn't know she was such a big star, you know, geez. Tonight we have a few other people to thank. Todd Evenson is our chairman of the board. Todd, right there. Jason Hopkins is the CEO of NAMI, right there. Now, no matter what you think, the person that did the most work today of anybody here was Janet Myers, right back there. Janet? She organized all of this and got it all together. Every time I have an event, I just show up and say a few words and everything's perfect, and Janet does all that. It's perfect. So we're trying to have a series right now on mental health. And this is the second in this long series we're going to have. The first one, we had a famous entrepreneur talk about depression. Somebody that you could be very, very successful and still have depression. He was talking about, last time we had this event, that he'd have depression for over a year. It would take him that long. He was really candid. I mean, a few times I had to just like sit back because he was talking so candid. So, you know, if you had a broken arm, you'd probably talk to everybody about it at work. And I think the panelists are going to talk about it. But if you have a mental problem, you're going to have, you probably don't talk about it. So what we want to do is eliminate the stigma in a very positive way and talk about it. And so we're going to have a series of discussions. The next discussion we're going to have is this summer, and we're going to have a representative from Brene Brown. How many people here know Brene Brown? Very few of us guys knew who Brene was, but now we know her. So, it takes a lot of work, and the people that are so dedicated to this cause, I came to All Health Network a couple of years ago to kind of help with their financial, but, I've grown to kind of be captivated by the cause. There are so many dedicated people that really try to help. And about 50% of our clients are Medicaid, people with the most needs. And our clinicians and our therapists take care of those people. And I'm always, every day, I'm shocked by what they have to deal with and how they can help people. And there's a whole couple tables right back here. Stand up, would you? Thank them right there. Callie, stand up, come on. They dedicate their lives to helping people with the most needs. So now I get to introduce the panel, and I was asked to do this about 2 hours ago, so I have to read it because I don't have everything memorized, but I know almost all the panelists very, very well. So some of this is going to be ad lib, and maybe I'll throw in a couple of comments here and there. No, not really. So the first person is Louise Louise Richardson. I've known Louise now for a couple of years, and Louise is the person that really organizes and makes a lot of these things happen for us. She's a volunteer, and behind the scenes she makes a lot of this happen. Louise has been involved in nonprofit community for over 30 years and been involved in mental health advocacy for nearly 15 years. She and her fiance Lee are currently the chairs of the All Health Network, and we call it Like Minds Leaders Take Action campaign, which is working to create a mentally healthy workplace and community. Thank you, Louise, and very much. So 3 of the 4 panelists I know really well, and the first one is Dr. Cynthia Grant, and you can see that Cynthia and I have our pictures right over here. We have offices right about next to each other. Cynthia takes care of the operation side, the clinician side. I take care of the business side, so we work very closely together as a team to try to help 16,000 patients every year. So Cynthia, Dr. Cynthia Grant, is a Chief Clinical Officer for All Health Network and the Compliance Officer. She finds joy and purpose and meaning in her work, and I believe that wholeheartedly. She's always talking about what is best for the clients. You may have seen her beautifully in one of the banners over here. This is Cynthia right here. So we consider Cynthia a rock star. So thank you, Cynthia, for being on the panel today. These aren't in order, so I got to move it around a little bit. Anyway, the next person is Toni Baruti. Toni is right here. I've known Toni for quite a few years. She's a business professional and entrepreneur that serves on multiple boards, including the Center for African American Health, the White Rose Foundation, the Links Incorporated, the Curious Theater. Although she serves in the community in a variety of different roles, her most important role is being a wife and a mother, right? Thank you. And Toni's got a great personality, but she's also like a star in analytics and computer science. So thank you for all the help you've done for us. So the only person that I haven't met is the next person. So that's Shelley Smith-Acuna. Doctor, right? Yeah, that's what I thought. She has been the Dean of the DU Graduate School of Professional Psychology since 2012 and has been on the faculty since 1992. I didn't think you looked that old. Don't Don't talk about age around me, that's for sure. Her areas of specialization are systems theory, couple and family therapy, and issues of culture, gender in organizations. She is also interested in restaurants and cooking. She was raised in Roswell, New Mexico, and loves living in the West. That's what it says here, that's great. So our last person on the panel here today has been a friend of mine for quite a long time, and we serve on different committees together and different boards. Komal Goyal, she always makes fun of me because I don't say her name exactly right. But I'm learning the East Indian kind of culture a little bit, so I'm trying. She's a technologist and a serial entrepreneur who dared to enter the Indian market with liquor product in 2007. That wasn't very popular then, was it? Okay. And sailed through the global downturn and made some money during that time. She currently runs a company called 6E Technologies. It's an Oracle service provider. She is awarded the Entrepreneur of the Year in 2016 by the Women Entrepreneur magazine. She's heavily involved in Thai Rockies. Patrice is the president now. I used to be the president. We're all kind of part of that Thai Rockies club, and it's a really great organization for helping entrepreneurs. And she also is involved in this program called ASWI, and what we do every year is we send 2 to 3 women to India, to the tier 2, 3 in cities, to help coach and mentor entrepreneurs. And that's hard here in the United States, but you can imagine going to India and fostering entrepreneurship. Some stories that she has on that. So we have a really great panel. I think you'll love it today. Thank you for all coming today. And Louise, you're up.
Thank you, Keith. Thank you all so much for being here. Our goal of today is to help you to open up that conversation about not only mental health, but mental wellness, because we all deal with that. And one of the things I did at the last event that we did, and I want to repeat it again, so bear with me. Who in here has dealt with anybody with mental illness? Raise your hands. Keep your hands up. Do not put them down. Who in here has dealt with anybody with substance abuse? Keep your hands up. Who in here has felt stressed, overworked, overwhelmed, tired? Yeah, 2 hands, 3 hands. You can lift your feet if you want. Now look around you. It's all around you. You have a support system out there, and that's what we want to help you all to understand tonight, is that you're not alone. There are lots of people who will help you through this, who understand it, who get it. Maybe not today, maybe not tomorrow, but get that conversation going. So that is our goal for tonight, to help you realize what is happening in the community, what changes are being made, and maybe help you take away a few tools tonight that will help you to talk to the person next to you to say, hey, how was your day? It was rough? Yeah, your kid's being a, you know what? Well, okay, I get it, so is my husband. So, see, you all get that. That laughter tells me you get that. And, and I'm not picking on the men, but as women in particular, we tend to open up a little bit more, but I think it's also nice to be able to take that deeper dive into it. So with that, again, I thank you. And my first question is for Cynthia. In a recent study, Colorado ranked #1 as the best place to live in the United States, which we all know, it's beautiful here. However, we're #9 in suicide, and that's not a great accolade to have. It's the first leading cause of death for youth among 10 to 14 in Colorado, and the highest rate of suicide is among white males aged 45 to 54. In 2015, there were 50 suicides in Douglas County alone, which is also the 5th wealthiest zip code in the United States. So my question to Cynthia is, how is this dichotomy possible, and what can we do to change this?
Such a simple question. I'll give you a simple answer, right? So when we got some of these questions ahead of time, you can imagine it's pretty overwhelming. I heard a lot of people respond sort of with a sigh in terms of when you hear some of the suicide statistics. Colorado and all of the western states are actually very high on the list. There's a lot of different reasons why Colorado, Wyoming, even Alaska are particularly high for suicide. Part of it has to do, in general, from a geographical standpoint, that there's a lot of rural areas in those particular, especially when you think about someplace like Wyoming. But we also have a lot of trouble across our region in terms of being able to actually get help. So there's been a shift in society in terms of being able to pay attention to the conversation, to be able to talk about it, but there's still an incredible amount of shame associated with mental illness in general. Over 50% of people who are dealing with some sort of mental health issue do not even attempt to get help. And so Keith mentioned this initially in terms of if you were to have a broken arm, you wouldn't think twice. But if you're dealing with depression or anxiety, many people carry that on their own. They carry the burden themselves. They try and hide it. I think that women in particular, although we do talk with each other, there's also some risk of being able to allow that to show, especially in the workplace, or if you are the primary person that's carrying your family, your children. We really like to remain strong. And we talked about that at our table even in terms of your physical, emotional, and mental health. One of the biggest indicators though of suicide and why the rates are so high is because of a lack of connection. There's a lot of research that's out there about the reasons why people die by suicide, and especially not just suicide, but in terms of having mental health disorders, is that people feel very disconnected. This room offers an amazing opportunity. I don't think I had really put the word connection in terms of Shelley's event and the way that this is about women connecting, but this actually helps protect against mental health struggles that people have. Same thing applies with kids. So part of my question was, why do 10 to 14-year-olds have such a high rate? And I just attended a speaker just 2 days ago. Jean Twenge is in town. She wrote a book called iGen, and she is finding some very, very startling statistics about how smartphones, since our society, and she related it to specifically to adolescents, so it was great timing to be able to answer your question, Louise. But it's really for all adults. We are so overwhelmed, overburdened, and to a certain extent disconnected, and our technologies have really caused a tipping point with that to change. The unfortunate part about suicide is that there is attention, but the rates continue to climb. And so we are doing a much better job treating and diagnosing and curing to a certain extent other physical illnesses. You're seeing rates going down with cancer and survival rates, and yet the numbers for suicide are still continuing to climb. So the dichotomy also is that wealth is not a protective factor. So just because folks have commercial insurance, just because they can pay privately, $100, $200 to be able to get really good care, even that doesn't protect a person from dealing with mental health issues. And in Colorado, across the country, there have been some laws to be able to try and level out physical health and mental health benefits. There's mental health that's called mental health parity. Some folks will tell you that, oh, it's all supposed to be equal, and that just hasn't been the case. More and more mental health centers like ourselves are struggling with reimbursements, and that sometimes the way that we get paid, it doesn't actually cover some of our costs. We can't pay our providers as much as they're worth, and so they leave and they go into private practice, and then they take a check. And so then people with wealth in Douglas County in particular are seeking out, trying to find a private therapist for their mental health needs. Oftentimes they have to go outside their commercial insurance, and it gets very, very pricey. So now we're back to that original problem of access. So We have a lot of different challenges that we deal with, and the nice thing about it is that there are services to be able to help, and there are initiatives that we have, but that the bottom line is that the more connected that we all are to each other to be able to reach out and connect with one another, that is the biggest protective factor that we can have.
Thank you, Cynthia. That was very informative. I guess I'm going to have to learn that my cell phone is not a connection. And my fiance will be happy to hear that. But very interesting statistics, and thank you so much. So the next question goes to Komal. What tools and techniques do you use or do you implement in your place of work to promote all health? Do you use training, education, resources, complementary therapies? What have you found that works best for you?
Thank you, Louise. Cynthia, thank you for using the word connection. Personally, I actually started my career in the corporate world and experienced that disconnected community that I was part of. So when I started my business, that was the one thing that was very, very important to me, to be connected with my people. Right now we are about 23 people, and it's easy for me to keep that connection going. So a couple of tools that we use in our company, first of all, is connection. Most of the corporate companies or the corporations I worked for thought that having a Friday, once a month Friday beer party was enough to make people connect, but that's not the case. Knowing your people, knowing them at a level where you see something very subtle in their emails or the way they talk, that there is something missing in that personality, and connecting with them at a personal level is what I do at this stage in my career and in my business. So that is one thing. I personally connect as a business owner, and I don't know for how long I will be able to do that as I grow my company, but what I have decided going forward as we become 22 to 220 people, I know I won't be able to connect with each of them personally, but I would make sure that all the mid-level management in my company is doing what I'm doing right now, keeping that connection going. So that is one thing. The other thing that I felt when I was back working for corporate America was I was being forced to do things that I was not very good at. So my managers used to think that if I worked really, really hard on something that I was not good at, I will become really good at that. But that never happened. So, but what it did was, it actually stressed me out. It stressed me out to a point where I would get depressed because I kept telling myself, hey man, I'm not good at it. So one thing that I started doing, as soon as we hire someone, we make them go through this Strength Finders. I don't know how many of you know about Strength Finders. That's our standard onboarding procedure. Even though if I'm hiring someone for one specific technology, and if I find, oh my God, this person is going to be really good at sales and is a connecting person and is going to be good at PR, I suddenly move them into a pre-sales position because they enjoy that. They're not gonna like sitting back in on the computer and just do the coding piece. They are people person, and they would be really good at doing pre-sales, for example. So that is one thing that our HR has sort of made part of our onboarding procedure. Go through Strength Finders and make people comfortable in what they are doing and not force them into the skill set they're not good at. So that's another thing that we do. And the third thing is, we all have stresses, let's face it. No matter what we do, if nothing else, if there is no work stress, I'll get an email from my daughter's school that, oh, there is a mandatory parents' night tonight, and I had no idea because I didn't check my personal email 3 days ago. So those stresses, they come, you know, you don't have control over them. So one thing that I have been practicing, and you know, you can tell this is because of my heritage as well, I have been an avid meditation person. I've been meditating for past 17 years. I was talking to Patrice, yeah, it's a long process. Man, it is a long process. But it helps. I have to say one thing. I like when I start my day with half hour of meditation and a little bit of pranayama. I do some breathing exercises, and that helps me center myself. And when I walk into the office with a news that, oh, we did that proposal and spent 6 months on it and we didn't get that contract, I am centered and I'm able to manage that situation with my people. And I think it's very, very important to have that kind of practice. Once you are practicing something, it is much easier to tell your people, hey, I've been doing this for a long time and it works. And my goodness, I have about 60% of our people who have gone into meditation practice. So these are the tools that we use in our company, and I have been personally using those.
Thank you so much, Komal. Workplace wellness is such an important thing to embrace for your employees. We spend more time at work than we do with our families, so I really applaud you for looking at the whole person wellness, which is a great segue into our next question for Toni. So stress at work is, regardless of your socioeconomic level or your professional level, is over the top now. And we're having more asked of us now than we did 15 years ago for the same position. So we're really taxed all the way around, and sometimes that strain can make us feel overwhelmed, isolated, like we don't really have a way out, way to deal with our work-life balance, which I think everybody struggles with, and I love that meditation can help to find that. Toni, as a leader, what protocols and tools can you put into place that will help address this? What are some of the suggestions that you would offer people who are dealing with these kind of professional kind of contradictions?
So for myself, I start out with the question of what type of quality of life do I want? And from there, how does my career support that? So before I take on a contract or before I start a job, it's, does this fit the quality of life that I want? Right now, I am a senior consultant for CU Medicine, where I do consulting for BI for the entire campus. But I also have my business, Solutions Boutique, where we do consulting for small businesses and nonprofits. I'm able to balance those two because I automate everything. I don't know if you guys are aware of the book, The Four Day Week. I automate everything. And that's what our company does. Solutions Boutique is that we help nonprofits and small businesses be able to free up some of their time using data to help make decisions or guide you through so that you can have that work-life balance. Another thing is making sure, like, the culture in your environment is very important. Making sure that it's inclusive, that you understand, that you're aware of different cultures. Making sure that your team works well together. With Solutions Boutique, the team that I work with, they all used to work for me at a previous time, and I know all of their skill sets. And as you were saying with the strengths, I make sure that they are working on things that are their strengths and not their weaknesses. So it's very cohesive, very collaborative, and we're able to get things done quickly. if you are doing something that you enjoy, you most likely are going to be in a happy place. There's not going to be any stress because you're not struggling to do something that's not your skill set. Another thing that, which has been a great stress release, is learning boundaries and saying no. The first time that you're given a project that you really don't have the time to do, it's okay to say no, and you feel so liberated. Even in your personal life, if it's a friend, do you want to babysit for me? No, I need my me time. And another tool that I use, and it's not really a tool, but it's self-care. If you don't take care of yourself, you can't take care of your family. You can't take care of your things that you need to take care of at work. Hey husband, I'm about to give a secret out. I have a massage therapist that comes to my house every other week. You have to make sure that you take that time so that you can recharge and be able to serve either your family or serve whoever you're serving at work. But that's one of the main things that I do, especially as with mental health. Being an African American woman, there's a lot of other things that we have to deal with. And within our culture, mental health is seen as taboo. You're seen, if you say you have a mental health problem, then it's automatically thought of as crazy. And so now you see a lot of celebrities, people of color coming out saying, yes, I struggle with this, and it's okay. And for me, I have my sister girls. And when I have a problem, that's who I call on. And those are the people that understand. And luckily I have my family members and my sister, they have gone into the mental health arena. And that's one area for Black women, is to find a therapist of color that understands your struggles. So, our white sisters, they can understand us and they can sympathize with us, but they really can't understand what it is that when you're the only Black going into a boardroom, that, what you're going in there with, feeling like, do I belong? So, with that, I have the groups, my sister girlfriends, and making sure that I work with people that are great people, like All Health. They are wonderful. So, those are some of the things that I do to help deal with the stress and support.
So far we've had some great suggestions. Make sure you're in your right fit, meditate, have your sister girls. We all need that group of friends. Learn to say no. That is a big thing. It's really, what I'm so empowered by hearing tonight is it really is taking care of yourself and that it's okay. And I love the every other week that massage therapist. Yeah, I could definitely get used to that. So that being said, Shelly, we've just heard some amazing feedback from really, very accomplished women. And as a scholar, educator, and leader in your workplace, please share any perspective that you have on topics already discussed, as well as any insight you have on cutting-edge research or findings that may impact all of us that we can take away in our daily lives. Give us some pearls of wisdom.
Thank you. This is terrific, and I'm really excited to be here, especially because what you pick up from all the discussion tonight at the tables, I think, in addition to the panel, is that mental health doesn't just happen. Like, what we'd like to believe is that good mental health is the absence of mental illness, and if you're lucky, you'll be mentally healthy, and if you're not lucky, you won't be. And that simplistic view just isn't true. So this idea that we cultivate and create our mental health just as we do our physical health, that it's not, again, something that just happens, but instead, through strategies and practices and good habits, that we can create mental health for ourselves, and also that we can be in a position of dealing with mental illness if we need to. And again, we've used a lot of analogies here tonight, but you know, if you had a cold, if you had cancer, if you had anything in between, you would feel that it was okay to talk about it, to get support about it, and to acknowledge what you were dealing with. And you know, you already heard about my age a little earlier tonight. I've been doing this, actually, I've been here since '92, but I've been doing this work for more than 30 years. And we have a ways to go, but these conversations are very much in the right direction in terms of really understanding what psychology has to offer to help us create health. So that first paradigm, that this is about practices and strategies and about each of us as individuals and as organizations to try to create and support health as much as possible. I want to throw out a couple of different concepts in the literature or ideas just as a way to pull together or organize some of what we've talked about tonight. We've talked about mental health versus mental illness, but one of our specialty training areas at Graduate School of Professional Psychology is in military psychology, and I've had the pleasure of hearing from General George Casey, who had a really, as Joint Chief of Staff about 10 years ago, had a big emphasis on mental fitness. And that whole term has just really been helpful to me. So when we talk about the practices and the strategies to create mental health, we love thinking about physical fitness, but thinking about what's your mental fitness? And in particular, along with that, one of our programs is in sport and performance psychology. And we talk a lot about optimal performance as a team. But when you think about, again, optimal performance in terms of mental health, it's easy to start with just thinking, oh, I'm not depressed, I'm not anxious. Instead of taking that more complex view, how am I dealing with challenges and struggles? And if you talk to the sport people, they won't say you shouldn't have stress or you shouldn't have anxiety. They'll talk about how do you get in that zone of maximum of anxiety that's not too much? And how do you get enough anxiety to improve your performance as opposed to the anxiety that tips you over the edge? Okay, we're here talking about workplace, and we did the hand raising exercise. You're gonna have stress, you're gonna have anxiety. Instead of pathologizing that or treating that as though it's a disorder or a disability, how can you think about anxiety management in a way that really helps you optimize the performance of your group? Not in a naive or simplistic way, but instead saying, what's the difference in this workplace between good stress and bad stress? How are we motivating people? How are we creating practices that help us deal with stress instead of trying to run away from stress or avoid it or just ignoring it? So that's one set of concepts that I want to highlight. And again, in the current psychology literature, there's a lot of emphasis on resilience. And again, with resilience, we can take a naive view, oh, I'm tough, you know, I have a lot of grit, so it just rolls off my back. That's really not how it works. That resilience is a practice of knowing how to face challenges with social support, with self-care, with a lot of, you know, it might be massages, it might be meditation, it might be friendships, but those things really help build your resilience. And the other thing that I like to think a lot about is organizational strength and the way that organizations build health, resilience, help us deal with stress. There's a whole set of literature called self-determination theory. If you're, you know, you wouldn't be here if you probably weren't somebody who liked to Google things, so you can Google that later tonight and read up if you haven't done that. It started actually in the 70s out of a literature that talked about internal versus external motivation, and people tend to be happiest when they're dealing with internal motivation. You know, when you're doing something because you want to, it's meaningful to you, as opposed to externally, that's kind of enforced on you. But what that's turned into with the self-determination theory is 3 words that I'll leave you with that I think are really good in thinking about organizational health, and we've touched on all of them, I think, tonight. Autonomy, competence, and connection. And so when we say you're going to build kind of stress resilience, you're going to build a healthy organization, if the people in your organization experience autonomy, competence, and connection on a regular basis, you'll be building mental wellness and mental fitness, which again, we've heard about from everyone tonight, but it's great to have this chance to have this conversation together. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Shelley. That's great. I once heard a little saying that said it's okay to have butterflies, just make sure they're all flying in formation. So I think there's some truth to that. I have one question I'd like to pose to the group, and then we'll open it up. And it has to do with workplace HR attitudes towards any kind of mental illness or, any kind of personal problems, basically. In the past, we've had pretty much there's been the stigma that if you have something going on at home, you keep it at home. You don't bring it into the workplace, and HR has taken very much of a hands-off approach, and we're hoping that that is changing. Part of the Like Minds Leaders Take Action program that we're incorporating at All Health is working with companies to address what happens when employees come in with any kind of personal issue, so we can get from a point of having mental stress to having mental wellness. Through all of this, though, there's still a ways to go. And so I would love any one of you to take this and tell me, what do you see as some points that can help drive the attitude to change? How do we destigmatize the ability for people in the workplace to get help through their HR departments, through their managers, where they don't have to worry, the managers don't have to worry about, well, if I have to let them go, is there going to be a discrimination suit? Or, what if I have to provide resources that I don't know where to find? I'd love some insight from a corporate and a clinical side. Somebody?
The clinical side definitely, this is really a double-edged sword. On the one hand, we're better at it, right? So I work in a not-for-profit, we're in behavioral health, we talk to each other, we check in with each other, we start meetings with laughter, we all love what we do, and yet we're completely stressed out. And so, on the one hand, you think that environment fosters that folks will use their EAP and that staff will take care of themselves, and we have a lot of initiatives internally. We have an active employee wellness program, but even in the helping profession, people often don't take care of themselves, or they feel like because I'm such a caretaker for other people, then certainly, I must be in control of how I'm taking care of myself. And so we see both sides of this in a not-for-profit setting on the clinical side. That I think that on the one hand, we know it when it's there, and we know what resources are out there, but even in the helping profession, I think that sometimes people are really resistant to it, to being able to acknowledge that with themselves. I imagine it's very different in the corporate world, so I'll turn that over to you guys.
So, to answer that question, this is a very tough question, Louise, I have to say that. Yes, the HR is, they get into a no-win situation in such cases where they cannot, they are afraid of a situation where someone is going through some issues at home and they are bringing those issues at work, and that's impacting the work. And they can be put on the performance improvement plans and stuff like that. So HR gets into a no-win situation, and I'm going to give a personal opinion here, so don't quote me here. Personally, I think it's important to have some kind of setup within HR where the employees feel safe to talk about it, because acknowledging some issue that is causing the work to be impacted is the first step. Acknowledging and giving them a safe space to be able to say that there is something wrong in their, at home due to some mental illness or whatever illness. If we compare this with, for example, a broken leg, let's just take an example and say, if someone was going through a broken leg and had to go through physical therapy and has to be put on some kind of short-term disability, can we start taking mental health at the same level? So giving them that safe environment to be able to talk. 90% of the time, we don't even acknowledge there is a problem. A broken bone is seen there, and you go to the doctor to get a cast on, but when it comes to mental issues,